the next perspective now will be presented by Egons. And Egons Bušs works for LMT, a very important company, at least in my life. Now for what? Not even half, 1/4 of century. I'm your client. So I'm happy to see that you really invented different interactions in between physical and digital security. And my big question is now, you have to have tango. You have to have two to do a tango examination. But you know, I was just thinking. On one hand, you're developing this very small area of Ādaži, the national army base, as a most secured place in Latvia, most probably, yeah? And with the 5G and with typical, you know, opportunities and something. But it is so much restricted. So somehow, when you create a super trooper digital safe area, you somehow also restrict it from, you know, physically from, you know, great public who could be your customers or something like this. So
the great public is not supposed to go in Ādaži just on a regular basis. You can't even collect berries or mushrooms. It's prohibited there. So yeah, but that's a different story. I'm not in the military today, but I'm going to share our experience with physical security and how it comes so very IT and so very cyber secure and everything.
Okay, go on.
Thank you.
Please. Yeah. Applauses, of course. Why not?
Three buttons should be easy. So yeah, I'm here to share our experience and what we've learned, and also some things that are still in process. Physical security used to be, how to say, very physical. When I was like 20 years ago, I was mostly IT. My background is IT, and just last 7 years I'm focused entirely on security. I was with long hair, and the physical security guys were actually sometimes warning me, well, this t-shirt is too old for you to wear. No, you have to be like more proper. These days, well, I don't have any hair anymore, but the point is that physical security has changed so much. So it works. A couple of words about LMT. I'm not from marketing department, but one interesting thing to mention is that back in 2016, a couple of different activities started at roughly the same time. One was, we created innovations. It was not exactly a department, but initiatives started. So we had business verticals. It's military, Ansis mentioned already. It's drones, it's medicine, it's a couple more. And goods that we realized at the very beginning that in most cases, security, it got to be from the very first day in the project, in the activity, in the upgrade of even core infrastructure, whatever it is. I think we are lucky and that we also have management support with that, because these days it works great. There are almost no activities LMT does. It's a cell operator. Initially started in 1991 that wouldn't involve physical or cyber security. Load-wise, it's mostly cyber, of course. But on the other hand, if we install something like a traffic light, traffic light shouldn't browse movies around the internet or try to hack someone. So it comes together, physical and cyber. And at the same time, a lot of physical systems, like alarm systems, smoke detection systems, that became obsolete. And so the security department had to upgrade them, so basically replace the old systems with new systems, and security guys were faced with interesting challenges. When you talk to head of physical security at LMT, he's very athletic, he's been doing physical security for all of his life, he had military background, and when you start talking about cameras, patching, updates, VLANs, segmenting network, it's honestly not his or his team business. And what we saw that all the systems, all the new systems were digital, they were so much IT, and the fast forward, at the end of the day, we decided that physical security actually should not be responsible for maintaining, upgrading, and do all the maintenance stuff with those security systems. On the other hand, they have to follow the legislation that sometimes changes the physical requirements. If they have some parts in critical infrastructure, that's again different ballpoint. And even in, like, it's not exactly household, but in very civil projects like parking barriers, or we have restricted parking, so people from outside couldn't just drive in. And when we start talking about barriers that they should open only if the car is right, then suddenly IT mind switches in from cybersecurity guys and says, well, wait, number plate is not sufficient to let somebody in. They need to present a second factor. And the second factor, which was quite a lot mentioned today, is a very interesting topic to discuss with physical security guys, because the only way they use physical multi-factor is to log in the systems or VPNs. Going forward, also the expectancy is that these physical security information systems are running almost continuously. It's usually 24/7. Again, of course, for the physical world, if you have one camera, you probably have overlapping sites, so you could see at least that the camera doesn't work or doesn't show. You probably have some video management system, etc., etc. But this has all to be managed. And then the challenges, we would call it cyber-physical ecosystem, is that, of course, cyber competence, lack of cyber competence, but also IT and network and all basically what people first usually learn in university for 3, 4, 5 years, and then they go to specialized courses, etc., suddenly has become on a plate for physical security guys within the very important object. They say, by they I mostly mean vendors, that it's going to be cheaper, it would be easier to manage, to administer, you could reuse your IT skills. Well, I don't know how it's in other companies, but our IT guys are extremely busy. They do not have resources to suddenly take several thousand of objects to manage, which each has firmware, software updates, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, it's actually increase of costs, TCO, maybe, and quite frequently the system itself, say alarm system, it's not that expensive. It could be actually cheaper than it used to be, but then there is planning stage and architecture stage, and it needs to be properly planned. Again, connections, networks, alarms, etc. And life cycles. A life cycle usually is at least 5 years for physical system. It used to be 20, but these days, of course, it's all IT, so it's 5 to 10 years maximum. The total cost of ownership increases, and mostly due to the cost of maintenance and taking care of it. Data, say cameras, video surveillance systems, they become better and better. They have more data, and the data needs to be stored, so the amount of data, and say, do you back up your entire video systems if you have 1,000 cameras? Maybe not everything, maybe just configuration. That depends on your business approach, but that's, again, something very, very new. Full spectrum security, this is a fancy naming of what we call, it's got to start at the management level. If management supports security and invests in security wisely, then it's much more sustainable approach. There are companies that would only give some budget to the security gate only if there is a major, how do you say it politely, major issue, problem. Something happened, somebody's getting hacked, or premises have been accessed by unauthorized personnel, something like that. In our case, it's much better because our full spectrum security includes that. On one hand, we are in the very beginning of the project, and also we report security at the boardroom. We get great support. Some of the challenges also came from COVID-19 digital transformation, but for physical security, it didn't change that much. It was mostly lack of resources, because if you have like physical security guards, if somebody is ill, you cannot come to work, but not too much maybe in this respect. On the other hand, it's not just challenges. Every new technology, every new approach brings something great. IoT sensors, and particularly new IoT sensors that work on latest technologies like 5G, narrowband, etc., they bring great business value. You can have different kind of electronic fences. You can have, of course, all the existing fire alarms and water flood, etc. alarms, and they would have much higher battery life. So again, labor is not going to get cheaper, at least qualified labor. So if somebody puts some sensor and battery works for like 10 years, 7, 10, depends on a vendor, it's of course great. These days, the old sensors usually required battery to be changed like once a year, once 2 years, which increases total cost of ownership significantly. There is possibility to use modern technologies like drones. It's not just like a fan thing or worsening. It's also for different way of surveying. It could be used, let's say, to get accurate picture of a cell tower. In our case, it could be used to monitor efficiency, energy efficiency of housing, etc., etc. Also, AI is a great topic. It's actually one of the ongoing activities. We have not reached the end of the road, but when we have video surveillance, which is supposed to look at our premises as well as outside on cell towers and security. Unfortunately, there are hooligans that are damaging properties on purpose. Some of them could be like, I don't know, anti-5G, anti-something. And it's very important to distinguish between actual attack and, say, an animal running. We have cell towers in very remote places with woods, mushrooms, etc. And then particularly in autumn, when it gets darker, and then there are animals moving around, and there are leaves falling, and there are more rain and other things. So it would be very important that our Security Operations Center would not receive like high priority alarm on each and every fox running by the cell tower. So this is where artificial intelligence could help us a lot, and this is one of the very, very interesting topics today. And physical security is no exception. Cloud is somewhere nearby. It depends on institution. We have our own approach, but again, for like small and medium companies, probably video surveillance as a service would make sense because they would just buy regular service and use it. Also, there is access control, like opening doors with badges or whatever people use, which could be also procured as a cloud service, which is neither good or bad. This is something that previously has never been part of physical security. With digital challenges, yeah, I mentioned already all the kind of technological competencies, and these very strict physical guys, no matter if they are insourced or outsourced, and IT guys, they sort of need to be friends. And we found out that in our particular case, it makes perfect sense to hire in a cybersecurity unit, cyber physical systems administrator. So we did it this year. So we are working in same security department. They are in different divisions, and the guy we hired actually knows fairly well what physical security concepts, but of course he can do a lot of things himself, or if needed, involve network guys, database guys, etc. Another interesting thing, particularly with digitalization of physical security, is so-called vendor lock-in. The vendors of physical components, cameras, video surveillance cameras is a great example, but not the only one. They try to get the customer for the rest of its life. Basically, if it's one vendor, that manages their own stuff perfectly. It could be more than cameras. It could be also doors and access control, etc., etc., sometimes even very nice integrated solutions. But if you have a need or want to add something else, it doesn't interoperate. So you either have multiple systems managing multiple things, or very carefully choose vendors and software and management software to run your physical security systems. Deployment strategy, starting from network planning and physical access, etc. Supply chain, they have more on the next slide, one of the next slides. Layers security. If you have digitalized door, of course, the head of security has to think on all the aspects, because if something will be hacked, maybe some doors will open, maybe a data center door could be opened, etc., etc. This is a new level. Before it, for the physical lock, the worst thing that could happen is that somebody lost the lock. What you do, you change the lock, and basically off you go. Fine, no problem. Of course, all the GDPR and costs and lifecycle management, I would really encourage for the new physical security project, try to calculate lifecycle expenses, not which vendor solution, turnkey solution for next 3 years costs what, but how many years you're going to use it. Most likely it's more than the time of warranty, or sometimes called a limited warranty. And the life cycle management is very, very important, and that would make the cost factor much more clear. Yeah, and we'll not talk about NIS2 enough today for technological challenges. Yeah, of course, well, we need electricity. Any physical security systems that runs on anything a little bit IT and not exactly on batteries. Batteries could be used as a backup. Generators could be used as a backup. Need access to electricity, but then everything comes to play again. Imagine 1,000 video cameras which come from factory with no password or with admin or that type of password. So one needs something to make it secure, and even password management could be an issue. Updates. Vendors publish their own vulnerabilities. Usually good vendors are pretty quick solving 0 days, and cameras are being fixed, or the software actually being fixed, and same goes with other things, but somebody needs to install it. And how do you install it? Do you go to every camera, attach something and install? No, impossible if you have a lot of cameras or other things. IoT sensors, very interesting topic about IoT sensors we've met is, say, IoT sensor has particular network access rights. It cannot go anywhere, it just can connect where it's supposed to. What happens if you need to change that sensor? It's not an easy question, but it's not that easy because you need the next sensor, which most likely comes from factory, well, as we say, clear as a, well, whatever, the clearest one. You need to configure it, and you need to inherit the access rights, either manually configuring it or somehow smartly doing this. So this is another thing. Default settings are terrible, terrible, terrible. Backups, particularly backups of configuration. Cameras and other stuff is relatively easy to replace. The question is if they have the same rights, if they have the same access, etc. And of course, it goes together with infrastructure management. And I think 3, 4, 5 years ago, I had a presentation, does your fridge hack Pentagon? This is, well, not fridge, but does your video camera or access control or fire alarm system hack somebody is a valid question. Supply chain security, very hot topic, and I got to say that we followed this very strictly. So in that sense, we were kind of lucky because war didn't change us dramatically, but it was relatively tough several years when we said no to different things. No to this Yandex library in that piece of software. No to Chinese this and that. No to this. Very, very challenging. And some say, yeah, but if you don't allow us to use that, then our business vertical will suffer. We cannot do a solution. But I said, fine, you cannot do this solution if it's not secure enough, particularly if you're targeting public safety, defense, and other sectors. Software provider, it could be good hardware, it could be bad software. Even worse, it could be bad software update or firmware updates. We've seen these cases that it was a good device with good software, good firmware. They changed something, they distributed firmware update, and then there is a malware inside. Also distribution channels, particularly for private persons, if they try to save a penny and buy something somewhere, say AliExpress telephone, a mobile phone, modern, sleek, you open up the box, it smells new, and it's infected before you even turn it on. Happens. Partners, with partners I mostly mean here what you work with, so you have to build trust. And again, trust at the end of the day is not just between organizations. They need to do the formal part, but also you need to verify and screen to the extent possible or according to legal requirements the personnel you work with. And still doing all that, what we do, every new solution, every new activity, project, we do test. We do have internal skills for penetration testing and white hat hacking, but also before go-live, particularly with something that is very important, either for national safety, security, or as a public say, a child watch. We've seen child watches spying on their parents, etc. So we do test it. So we do work with partners also in the region in order to test the final solution because we want to make sure that it works well. On the organizational side, we are ISO certified. We actually have 3 certificates, which 9,000 is quality, basically that the papers and everything is in order. 14,000 is environment. We use a lot of electricity for our cell towers, mostly, but also data centers, etc. So that comes actually as a legal requirement in order to have normal price, sort of normal prices for electricity. And ISO 27K, these 3 systems are integrated into one. We call it integrated management system. So if somebody has an audit, it's not 3, 4 audits, it's 1 audit. Probably 2 audits, 1 internal audit before the real audit, and then the actual audit. We got recertified last year. The point taken from here is the scope. ISO 27000 doesn't guarantee anything as such. One needs to really define the scope, and in our case, it's core business, including development of new services. That means that security is taken into account from the very, very beginning. Of course, physical security, to the large extent, we wouldn't allow these days, not only these days, but these days we wouldn't allow any engineer with Russian passport even remotely working. Before that, we wouldn't allow physical guys just to physically walk around our office or data center without being supervised. That's a requirement, and also with all the video surveillance and guards on site, it's enforced. Guest policy, yeah. But in all these activities, we also take risk-based approach, because we are a commercial institution, although very important and of national importance, but we got to follow reasonable rules, and our shareholders would like to receive revenues at the end of the day. Also, vendors and suppliers, it's a tough world, or it's been for a while, but it's amazing how many places Russians have invested in. Say, drone vertical is probably one of the most painful I've faced, because any new good drone innovation which is applicable to small and medium business, so it's not terribly expensive, has some connections back to Russia. So we had to say no quite a lot of times. And fully agree with previous speakers that staff needs to be trained, and it's not like a one-time initiative. How trained is probably in context with the organization itself. There is no one silver bullet, but it needs to be done, and it needs to be done more and more frequently to those guys. Like, we have a lot of engineers that do require admin rights, root rights, so privileged account management is also very, very important, and we're working on that. One of the hot topics internally is how to add more multi-factor authentication when it comes to the physical world and physical security. It's not like really a piece of cake from the vendor side. There's something available, so we are exploring this area, and we see that it is very important because, well, again, these cameras with password, and some of them even have limitations. Maybe it's just so many symbols, etc. Second factor could improve security significantly. Need to know principally, good old principles, that someone has access to what he or she needs rather than everyone to everything. This applies also to physical security and who sees which objects and cameras, etc., etc. And of course, business-oriented approach. Of course, risks, well, there are some security department risks would sometimes be as big as we cannot endorse them or say fine, but business-oriented approach also could mean that, well, business board discusses a topic and they are happy to take some of the risks, and then it's all fine, we can work with that. Yeah, to summarize, I think lack of cyber-physical competence is probably the most challenging part in physical security world, and also we have very good partners in physical security we work with, but also commercial companies that do physical security professionally, they are facing the same problems, and they have also very high cost pressure. We also are cost cautious, but with good, well, reason behind. We could probably be a little bit in a bit better privileged situation, and regular security guys, they basically can charge what they can charge in Latvia, and they would still need a lot of these things I mentioned before. New opportunities, yeah, and at the end of the day, it's a full spectrum security. Everybody here, or almost everybody in the beginning mentions that they are hiring. We will be too. So that will be it from my side. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Let's turn to these questions. Is this guy working with you?
No, not anymore.
Oh, okay.
But he has still a strong impact on decisions we make. Yeah.
For sure, for many companies around the world. Now, today I heard a kind of reminder that one of the big failures is actually your own stuff. They can, do some bad things, maybe with no purpose, really. So have you had the chance, have you had the situation that you actually fired the guy or the lady maybe because of he was really compromising your own company, so he was doing bad things? So I see how many aspects of the physical and digital combination of security itself. You really invest, you think every day. I understand why you lost all your hair now after this presentation for sure. But have you ever tried this, you know, to punish the person because he's, you know, doing bloody thing and we cannot trust, even if he has a Latvian passport?
Well, Latvian passport as such doesn't guarantee more than it's a
Not at
Latvian
all.
citizen.
Of course.
I think that aspect actually starts somewhere else and a little bit different. It's an HR question, actually, because the guy or girl you're hiring needs to fit. Hard skills are a requirement. Of course, without hard skills, we wouldn't hire anyone, but also to fit and organizations, not only structure, but also culture and behavior. So I do not remember any case we had to fire somebody for misbehaving or trying to do something bad. We have had minor incidents in the scale of the company. And what we do, if there's something has happened, we security guys have catch somebody, we forcefully train them.
Okay.
So that's what we do.
What does it mean, during the night or what? What is forcefully?
Forcefully, that means that they are required to go to training courses, or that would be it. But, well, nobody has ever rejected yet.
Okay, and what kind of security threat it was? So what was the training?
It's mostly about information security, user awareness programs, information disclosure rules, etc., etc. So it's like a regular training. It's just once more and maybe analyzing the situation the unfortunate staff member has been into, and also then without mentioning actual names, we use those cases to learn new stuff and annual awareness training, etc. So it's all it's useful.
It's a little bit sad because of you doing this constantly on your staff, it seems like you don't really need the great prize which will be now given by
No,
this
I didn't
lottery.
feel that, yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I didn't steal it from the audience, somebody else going to get it.
Exactly. Well, anyway, thank you very, very much for this insert. I really believe this is a tough job, but thanks a lot. You do this, and it makes our life even more secure. I just felt
Thank you very much.
that I'm connected to your network now, probably the secure network, probably. Thank you very much.